Is everyone in here? Just about.
Yeah.
Close the door.
Okay. Well, in this picture, in this room, you can see that Rome is depicted to be very, very cruel, and this is very, very true. Rome was most afraid of rebels, so they would have Roman soldiers lined up to make sure that the peace was being kept, that the rules were being followed, and they would have had shields like this and swords like this. Now, when Jesus was born, Herod the Great was in rule. Now, Herod the Great was known for some very magnificent things, such as reconstructing the temple. But he was also known for his very cruel, very paranoid personality. He was so paranoid that his throne would be taken over that he ordered the death of his favorite wife along with his 3 sons. Now, when he heard that the king of the Jews had been born, he was so paranoid that he ordered the death of all the young baby boys under the age of 2 to be slaughtered in Bethlehem. And that was around 30 baby boys at the time. Now, archaeologists believe that a sword like this was used. This is because it's very lightweight, it's very short, it's sharp, and it's double-edged. Now, there are 3 forms of execution. The first form is the religious form that the Jews would use by way of stoning. Now, the way that this would work is someone would have their hands and their feet tied, and they'd be pushed over a cliff. Now, the cliff was to be higher than the height of 1 person, but no higher than the height of 2 people. This is so when they were pushed over head first, they would not die instantly, and therefore the witnesses, the accusers, would be able to pick up stones and finish the job by stoning them. Now, this sounds very cruel, very violent, but it is nothing compared to the political way, by way of the cross, that the Romans would use. The way that this would work is someone would be nailed between the 2 wrist bones and their feet, and they would be hung to die. Now, the way that the death would come upon them was through suffocation. Their lungs would collapse and would fill with fluid, and they would suffocate. Now, in order to continue breathing, they would have to constantly be pulling themselves up and pushing themselves up using the footrest. And as you can imagine, this would become absolutely exhausting. So, the Romans added in what is called the mercy seat. However, this is not very merciful, it only prolonged the death. The way that this would work is, after someone got so tired of pulling and pushing, they'd be able to sit down and take a break. However, when they sat down, they would not be able to breathe. So they could only sit down for a couple of seconds, and then they would have to continue pulling and pushing. Now, to appease the Jews, the Romans wouldn't have anyone hanging on the cross during the time of the Sabbath. So, if the Sabbath was coming and someone had not died yet, they would have to crush all the bones in their legs. That way they would no longer be able to push up the footrest, and then they would soon die. Now, this is very, very cruel, very violent, and this is when the Jews were desperately crying out for light and for hope. They were crying out for their Messiah, for a Savior. And this is when Jesus was sent into the world for them. So we'll talk more about him in the next room.